I'd like to welcome everybody today. Thanks for joining us. Happy International Women's Day for yesterday and every day. First of all, starting off with acknowledging that I am on the Wurundjeri lands of the Kulin Nation and like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and recognising that I am on borrowed country, that this land was never ceded. And welcome to any of the participants out there, wherever you are and whatever country you're on, and welcome to you, especially if you come from one of our First Nations peoples. So here we are. Hope you've bought your lunch because it's going to be a great ride and you won't want to duck out to get your egg sandwich. You want to stay strapped in. So yeah, hope you have bought everything you need. We're going to have Q&A, but we may not have time to answer the questions directly. We may, we'll see how it goes, but I think we're sort of planning on responding afterwards. So please write your Q&As in and we'll respond by email afterwards with a full answer to everything that you've written. But just to test that, you want to go into the chat box of your Zoom and just write in there. Tell me what you're having for lunch. I'm interested. I'll be drinking water. Where's my chat box gone? Oh, there's one. Oh, leftover tacos. Really? Oh, that could be quite delicious. They probably get better with age. Yeah, yum. Udon. Love a bit of udon. Yeah, Nutella. I just bought some Nutella yesterday. Fantastic. Yeah, yum. I want what you're having. Coconut rice. Oh. So I'm going to start off by introducing the panelists that we have here with us today. So, you know, this International Women's Day is, the focus was on leadership. And when EWB thought about leadership this year, we really thought about our amazing network of engineers who are doing incredible things in the world, and the amazing amount of incredible women engineers that we have on our team and through our network. So we wanted to sort of celebrate the everyday women leaders, because, you know, we know the statistics for women in engineering, and the fact that we do have so many amazing engineers in the EWB network. Every single day, you guys are out there doing what you do in whatever sphere of influence that you're in, and that's leadership. So wanted to recognise that. So we have Eva. Eva is here from UTS. There she is, on Gadigal country. Eva and I caught up in Brooklyn a couple of years ago at the Engineering for Change conference. She gets around. She has her finger in so many pies, and all of them are about diversity, as far as I can tell. She is really pushing the sector. She's the Director of Engineering, Director of Women in Engineering and Information Technology, and a Senior Lecturer in the School of Professional Practice and Leadership at the University of Technology in Sydney. She's got a background in telecommunications engineering, and she actively collaborates on social justice and community engagement in STEM, diversity and humanitarian engineering, including working with Tech Girls Are Superheroes and EWB Australia, of course. At UTS, she co-teaches the first year EWB Challenge, supervises student capstone and studio projects, has joined design summits to Cambodia and Timor-Leste, and continues to volunteer with Fedo Engineera, the women engineering team in Timor-Leste. She went as a field professional, actually, with EWB and worked in Timor-Leste with Fedo Engineera, which is so cool. So welcome, Eva. Chelsea she's an incredible leader in our volunteering space. She gives so much of her time to EWB, and really is sort of a bit of a front line for volunteers meeting EWB and actively engaging with EWB in the first instance through the school's outreach program. So really sort of like at the front face in a kind of way of EWB. So Chelsea, she's a water engineer, passionate about sustainable development and giving back to the community. She's an Australian representative for her company's global giving and volunteering program, and as an active volunteer and is an active volunteer with EWB. As EWB's National Schools Outreach Program Coordinator, Chelsea is committed to inspiring the next generation of diverse STEM professionals, working with both school and university students to highlight the positive impacts engineers can create for society. Chelsea is also a tutor for the EWB Challenge at UTS and a global shaper, exploring opportunities to create local impact. Welcome, Chelsea. Stephanie Hamill, she's our Vanuatu Country Program Manager, which is amazing. She's she's an environmental engineer and has been working since 2006 for NGOs in Uganda, Timor-Leste, the Solomons, and now Vanuatu. So she's got a lot of global experience in the for-purpose sector with engineering crossing over. And she's also done consulting and worked in local council in Australia as well. So she's got a very diverse background and set of experiences. Through her studies and experience, Steph has learnt that to be working efficiently in the water sector, one has to tap into a wide range of skills and behaviours in order to respond to the wicked problems of today's world. So that complexity, and she's very adept at working in complexity. She's therefore constantly looking for opportunities to grow her own technical, social and leadership skills, as well as those of colleagues and partners, in order to ultimately create healthier and more resilient living places. I love the way that that's described. And it's tricky, the stuff that we're grappling with, right? It's not simple. And so it's amazing to see you in that space to step out there in the world in Vanuatu and leading that program. Welcome. Allison Stokely. She's worked with EWB for a long time. I've been with EWB 3 years, and she's definitely been right there by my side the whole time. She's got so much insight into who we are and what we do. An absolute leader in her space, and recently recognised for her leadership at EWB as she was promoted into the Senior Manager for Education role. She's inspired by the opportunity to work across sectors, creating pathways for technical professionals to continuously learn, explore and contribute to the world. After an undergraduate degree in civil and environmental engineering in the US, Allison moved to Melbourne to complete a Masters of Environment at the University of Melbourne. Across both continents, she's worked in sustainability consulting, education and sustainability advocacy. She co-authored the EWB publication, Redesigning Engineering, that explores diversity in the tech sector. So welcome, Ali. So good to have you all here. So why are we here? Well, you know, I was born in 1970. I grew up in the 70s. My mum was like outright, straight up feminist. You know, she was head of the nurses union. She advocated in, you know, Parliament for better working conditions for nurses. She wouldn't let me wear pink. No way. Yeah, she was absolutely, she wouldn't let me join the Girl Guides. She said it was like the army. She was absolutely like, you know, if you're going to be anything in the world, you can be anything you want to be in the world. So she was very, very strong on that. Here we are, and it's now 2021, and we've all been reading the media. Things haven't changed as much as we would like them to. You know, I think that there is some shifts, absolutely, but we're nowhere near where my mum would have been busy just being, you know, 20, 50, however long, 50 years ago. That's right, that's how old I am, yes. So that's why we're here today, because we have to keep this conversation going. We have to keep on living this story. We do have more opportunity. There is more conversation about this, but it's not done. We're not done yet. We have some way to go. So here we are. So we know with engineering, then we know the stats. Most of you on the call today would know what we're up against in terms of gender and diversity in engineering. So it's important that we talk about this. And so Ali, let's kick off with you. You've been working with engineers and the engineering professionals, the sector, for a number of years. How do you see our education programs contributing to the new story of engineering?
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Eleanor. It's such a good place to start, because you're right. So many of these conversations start with the issue, but I think we know what the issue is. We know that things haven't changed. The dial hasn't moved as much as we would expect in so long. But the role that we got to play with putting together the Engineering Redefined report, and what we get to see through all of our education programs, is where that shift is happening. The Engineering Redefined report was able to look at the EWB work, our education initiatives, our volunteer chapters, where you do see a very high proportion of women participating in engineering programs, mainly education initiatives, but with the hope that that's attracting them and retaining them, and then enabling more diversity into the sector. So I'm excited for the role that EWB has been playing in this space. And I think specifically when you look at our education work, one of the bits that really sticks out to me that I'd love to hear more conversation around is through our education work, we create those learning opportunities, we create those learning journeys, and sometimes it's in the classroom, sometimes it's outside of the classroom, sometimes it's for first year university students, sometimes it's for a mid-career professional. There's such a variety, but I think if you ask a lot of my colleagues in this space, or those on the call today, like Eva and Chelsea, who deliver that work as well, one of the foundational pieces of that is that chance to reflect on your values and then put that into practice. So reflecting on the world you want to see, oftentimes that is a more equitable one if you ask the people who are attracted to EWB. And I think through our education work, we enable people to start to figure out what their role in creating that world is or can be, and then build the skills to actually start making that happen. You mentioned that this stuff is tricky, that we're working through really complex challenges, and working towards a more equitable world is part of that, but it's also the skills around creating more sustainable world, and that is so key to what EWB does. So we enable people to build those reflective skills, to find their values and unpack them in groups through learning opportunities. And those are skills that will see them through a university degree, but that's the kind of thing that will set them up to contribute to these challenges over time, because it is still going to take a long time. The stuff we're working through is complicated. I should correct that. It doesn't have to take a long time, but the stuff we're working on is tricky. It should happen more urgently than it is, but we know that we're not going to solve this in a 10-step list that could be achieved tomorrow, that it's a big challenge. The thing that I would add to that is, I think really practically what we enable students to do, and professionals working through some of the training offerings, is to unpack these skills and build these skills through real projects. And in those real projects, we ask them to think about where the different strengths lie that can help them move forward this challenge and come up with a great solution. And that enables people to start figuring out what true diversity really means, and how that can move forward an idea, and what these different strengths look like, and what a valuable contribution to a team can be. And I really love seeing that come to fruition in things like the EWB challenge that Eva and Chelsea work on, because asking students to think about where knowledge lies, who needs to be involved in conversations, is such a great place to start.
Eva, you want to build on what Ali's saying there?
Maybe that's something I can hand over.
Yeah.
100%, and I agree with all of your points there, Ali, about what the role of the EWB challenge can play with first year university students, and that's exactly what we see in the classroom. So you can almost see those light bulb moments where students connect with, okay, I know what it is that I would like to achieve, but how do I get there? It's still quite uncertain when you start. But when they do the EWB challenge with a team of people they didn't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they have a journey over 10 weeks, students start to connect their values and purpose to their technical skills and their life experiences walking in. And that is definitely a game-changing moment for a lot of students. And to link back to the gender equality discussion today, what we've noticed is that it's definitely a light bulb moment for a lot of women in the classroom, and we don't have many, and we most certainly want to increase that. We also want to keep them, and also other underrepresented minorities, because they can connect parts of themselves into their profession, and that's super important to getting started with your professional identity. And I wanted to also flip it around and chat about academics because, you know, we're in the classroom, how our team looks matters as well. So this year, we've been super lucky to have a gender balanced team with coordination. And also our tutor team is more diverse and more gender balanced than the average engineering subject. And I think that also reflects on, you know, people who are interested in teaching the EWB Challenge and being involved in the humanitarian space is a diverse audience, and also people feel welcome and open to be able to contribute. And what's beautiful about this is that the teaching team that the students then see in the classroom is diverse. So by that way, the challenge is also modeling what a diverse team can and should look like. And it's a great team to work in. The other thing I wanted to draw upon, is just the student participation. We see that diversity travel through from the student chapters as they do some of their volunteering work with universities, but also as they progress into the state chapter. This is something that's working to keep that diversity within all the EWB activities that I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. I was thinking that, you know, we see it in the challenge, and that's an integrated curriculum integrator. So a lot of people do that. But actually, when it gets to a choice, like the chapters or the design summits, you actually see the participation of women percentage-wise change and increase. So there's something there, isn't there, about connecting to values that's really important for women in engineering. Yeah. So Chelsea, you know, you're right there with the chapters. You're engaging with them as they come on board into their schools outreach program. Talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the gender situation there.
Yeah, before I do that, I actually might just kind of go off what Eva and Ali have both been saying, because as a woman in engineering myself, I can completely attest. I have to say, like, from my own experience, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to study when I went into university, but I did actually do the EWB challenge in my first year of study, and it 100% was like a light bulb moment for me, being able to realize that kind of social impact that engineers can have. And it was like definitely something that was like, okay, I'll keep going with this degree, continue to pursue engineering, and then from that point kind of started to look at those kind of voluntary opportunities that you mentioned. So joining my student chapter, and also participating in a design summit in Cambodia kind of later in my degree, which was kind of like, I think, a good point for me to do that, because it was like really then got me kind of ready and rearing to go to enter into the engineering workforce, knowing that we could have that really great impact for communities. Yeah. So then I guess my experience in my university chapter, and now kind of helping to oversee the school outreach program for Engineers Without Borders, it's definitely a space where we do see a relatively equal gender split amongst our volunteers, which is really great because it's our volunteers who are then going into the classrooms and acting as role models for school students, and really helping to break down those stereotypes. I think, like, similar to kind of the university programs, we definitely try to have create that real world link for students in our workshops, and focus on that social impact, which as has been mentioned a bit before, we do find is particularly attractive to female students. And I think it's like with the school outreach program, it's really interesting because it's not something that we like only helps to spark interest in school students, but it's also there for our volunteers, and kind of, again, reinforcing that the bigger picture outside of the theory that they're learning in class, and just they're out there teaching students, but then also reinforcing it for themselves, that that social value that engineers can create. And then, of course, as part of the program, we do target female school students as well as kind of other minority groups. So looking also at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, non-metropolitan, and those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So also having a think about that intersectionality as well. But making sure that we get into those classrooms where those students are and trying to spark that interest. I think I've had some really great experiences being part of that program myself. And some of my favorite moments, I mean, I love when any student is kind of like has their mind changed once we've done a workshop, and like maybe they weren't considering engineering before, but I've had lots of experiences where students have come up after and just like, oh wow, like I didn't realize that all those things that engineers could do, like, yeah, it's not something that I had considered before, but I would definitely think about it now. And I particularly love when when it's the female students who are coming up and saying that at the end. So yeah, I think it's really important that our volunteers are those role models. So it's great that we do have some gender equality within our EWB program, so that they are then getting out there and kind of showing students what we can do.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot as well, that it's actually the people that are delivering the schools outreach are they're the way, maybe it's the way that you onboard them, Chelsea, as well, but they're engaged and they're passionate and they're so excited about what they're delivering, and that excitement sort of rubs off on the students as well. And I think you're completely right about this thing. I've also heard from people who deliver the schools outreach program that by delivering it, they sort of embed their passion again. They remember their passion through delivering the schools outreach program. So it's fantastic that that's having such an impact on gender equality in EWB, keeping people in the pipeline, but also lighting a spark for young girls and women. Eva, back to you. I'm interested to hear, because I think we're starting to hear a lot about the Australian situation and keeping people in the sector and bringing them into the sector and changing the sector, and that's really critically important. But there's also something, isn't there, around as engineers, when we're designing, ensuring that we're not leaving anyone behind, that we're increasing equality and not unconsciously, creating a problem that more of a problem for women. So I think that there's some really interesting ways that we're teaching technology development and design. Been really interested to hear about some of that from you.
Yeah, something that I've seen work really well with some of the higher year level students, because they do start with the EWB challenge, but for those students who want to deeper dive into the technology development side, what's really great with some of the EWB projects I've been involved with Capstone and studio projects now is that gender equality is actually part of the project. It's embedded into the criteria, into the purpose, and in who's involved. It's not just oh wait, who needs to be involved in community consultation later on. It is part of the project. And what's also been interesting in terms of the projects that I've looked at before in menstrual hygiene management in Timor-Leste, which is a link back to Better Engineer from 2018, and then we're still working together on it, is that I've also had male students look at menstrual hygiene management with female students. And I think that's a great conversation to have, is that it does involve anybody, anybody and everybody. And a project that we're jumping on board with this semester with the mechanical engineering studio project is around the manual nappy washing project, which connects into your work in Vanuatu, Steph. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And this again is a gender mixed team. So keen to see what happens. Yeah,
cool. So Steph, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. Lots of leads there from what you've been speaking, all of you, just before. I guess in Vanuatu, one of the examples that I can talk in terms of technology development project having potentially a big impact on women is the development of a tumble drum, so a non-electric washing machine. It started with a request by one of the local partners who was looking at developing a washable nappies as an effort to help the government in banning disposable nappies. And so providing alternatives to communities, affordable ones and accessible ones in Vanuatu. But they were missing a technology component for when all these washable nappies are out there, what could be an effective way to support those washing these nappies. So the majority of the cases are women and girls in Vanuatu. And so how to find a technology or like an in-between, a hand washing, spending a lot of time, and an expensive electric washing machine. So that's where we got involved. And So we had a great few months with our new Vanuatu technology development engineer, a male, who also, as you were saying, has been incredible, embracing not only the technology but the whole principle. There was a lot to take on from that incredible depth of the technology development approach that we're working with and constantly adapting and learning from, but and based on human-centered design. So we had a great, few opportunities to meet with women, and that starts from the very beginning, as you were saying, Eva, to understand via empathy mapping, for example, some of the insights that they had in sharing, hearing the experience about what it is to be doing hand washing as it stands, with the pains, and really specific example, which then drives a lot of our motivation to come up with the best technology, but we see the direct impact. So they're looking forward to have the first prototype, but there's lots of stages to be able to, before we get to the prototype stage, capture all these, what we hear, what we understand from what is not said. But that's what the empathy mapping is helping us to capture properly into a product requirement document. So that's been a great journey. Some of the other Vanuatu.
Keep going, because I know that there's a lot going on there. And so you're also looking at sort of women in engineering in Vanuatu, right?
That's right. So that's, I guess, the angle via technology development. But there's other ways to shift, I guess, the mindset about engineering. There's directly by interacting with the few engineer women who are already working, and basically understanding their journeys, understanding the barriers that they've had to get to where they are. Fascinating stories every single time, and appreciating the fact that it hasn't been, an easy journey. I'm reflecting personally on the fact that, I'm a woman, and I had some challenges to get there, but I don't think that's the same level as some of the stories that I hear here in Vanuatu or before in Timor. I think we had similar moms, Eleanor, when you were talking about your mom saying basically you can end up doing anything you would like. That's very much what the environment I grew up with. And so engineering was one of these options. But that's definitely not the same environment for some of the women that we meet during this consultation. So lack of role model, some cultural barriers which would drive some women to be more, to be naturally exposed to more finance or teaching careers, less engineering. So having more of these role models is even more key in countries like I'm working in Vanuatu.
Yeah, so a full, you're doing a whole spectrum there, right? From the thinking about how do we make sure that the technology that we're developing isn't leaving anyone behind, particularly women and girls, right through to how do we include more Vanuatu women in engineering projects, and right through to understanding what the barriers are and sort of starting to look at how those barriers might be removed. And I think that's what we're up against, right? In the whole sector, like we've been, working in this way. This has been almost like our theory of change for the last 15 years. Let's start bringing more people into engineering from diverse backgrounds. Let's start, exposing them to the power and impact that engineering can have, the positive impact that engineering can have on society and on the environment. Let's give women a voice in the engineering sector, and celebrate, the power of diversity and what the innovations that can come from that. So, I'm really, I think, we launched our strategy last year, and our new vision statement is technology that benefits all. But I'm really loving what you're saying, both Eva and Steph, that all of us as engineers, men, women, everybody, can be thinking about technology that benefits girls, actually. Just put that lens on as a start. So it's a mindset shift, right? So Eva, talk to me a little bit about that. Tell to me about that. It's, this is not just a women's issue. This is everyone's issue. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm a full believer in gender equality affects everybody, but it also impacts everybody. So therefore, everybody needs to be involved. So in everything that we do, being aware of who's in the room, who's not in the room, or whose voices are not being included, but should be, want to be, and need to be. And how do we enable those opportunities to happen? It could be in your meetings every day, or it could be in your technology development. It needs to be absolutely holistic and everywhere. Otherwise, we're never going to get there. And also the visibility of when you are championing change, be loud and proud about it. Tell people about it, because other people will be like, oh, I didn't realize this was a thing. I still have conversations with people who don't realize that we do have a gender gap in engineering. So everybody's at a different place on the journey, and that's okay, but if we're not talking about it, then, we're not all on the same page. So how do we get there? So yeah.
Totally. And Chelsea, what do you reckon? Like, when people say, oh, I'm a water, and a woman says I'm a water engineer or whatever, like, is there something around that storytelling element that we could be doing better or doing differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm kind of sitting in a bit of, I guess, a unique in a way position at the moment, kind of involved with that, the school students in the school outreach program, also university students, tutoring the EWB challenge, and then as a woman myself in the engineering industry. And I think something that I've definitely noticed across the board is that engineers do need to be better at storytelling and talking about the human side of what it is that we do. So I myself have been definitely putting in more thought and effort into, rather than introducing myself as a water engineer who designs water and wastewater treatment plants, which to many people kind of doesn't really mean a whole lot. I kind of, try to bring in that human side of things and talk more about, like, I am part of making sure that Sydney-siders can turn on their taps and have access to the clean water that they need to survive, really. So I think that it's definitely something that that everyone can be part of, helping to break down those stereotypes by having a think a bit more about that kind of human side of what it is that we do as engineers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think your example there is really excellent. Steph, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I loved it. I think I went from, via a similar journey, I'd say, from something, as I said, that I landed in as any other option as a career, to something where I could actually have a chance to reflect on the why on a daily basis, of the why of why I'm involved in that, the why, how can we do a better job and have a positive impact, and that's every day that we have a chance to do that. And I think I feel like if there was something for all of young engineers to be putting an effort on growing and putting words onto the values and how that translates into their everyday job, I would suggest that that's a worthwhile effort. I think in my journey, going through leadership course a little bit later on in my career, just sort of like was, kept opening boxes and putting words on something that I was just feeling, and that I thought it was important, but didn't put it in words, and valuing that it was actually, really powerful. So I would suggest starting that process a little earlier in one's career, so that it's blossoms, I guess, earlier in the career. So I really like that aspect, which is probably not something which is a strength in the traditional way of learning about engineering, but which adds so much to one's career and the impact of our work. So it resonates a lot. Yeah.
And when you're doing your work in Vanuatu, in the field, with communities, is there something important there as well about our own assumptions and checking in with the women, and is that something that both men and women engineers can do?
It is indeed. Yeah, I mean, we have to make assumptions at the start when we design programs, but I think we have come to quite a lot of maturity with our programs where we're able to check in and on all the assumptions and indicators that we've developed to be able to check that participation is meaningful, not something that we wrote in a proposal and forgotten after about it. So I think we have come up to a point where our framework is really good to help us do this, and in particular, as you said, checking our assumptions, such as, not all women's group will have the same views. It's not, we have a diversity within the women's group, as I was saying already. Me as a white woman and my Vanuatu colleagues around me would have different views about what technology should look like, how it can be the most impactful for most people in Vanuatu. So yeah, I like that reflection, constant check-in on who we're working with and making sure that we are able to check in at various points of the project that we're still doing the right thing.
Yeah, so success looks, if we're taking that lens, success looks like when we're told that we've got it right, really. We can't decide on success at the beginning. We have to be checking constantly to go, is this still right? It's almost like a co-design kind of process, right?
And our methodology, I think, really allows for that. These cycles and not fearing for going back to a bit earlier stage because we learn on the way. So that's really important for engineer male women to be able to do this.
Yeah. It's such good insight. You mentioned, Chelsea, that the school's outreach program is focusing on, attracting and engaging with girls, but also other underrepresented groups. And our report on Engineering Redefined, Ali, says that when we focus on the potential of engineering to deliver significant positive social and environmental outcomes, we automatically attract greater diversity. So this is a really interesting theme, right? It's like, and it's not just about women, it's about men who are interested in this kind of thing as well, and other minority groups. It's across the board. You attract a different kind of person when you're talking about this. So we can start breaking some of those stereotypes just immediately by talking about the examples of positive engineering. Eva, have you seen this in your breadth of engagement with EWB?
Yeah, so from working with first year students to some of the third and fourth and fifth year students with their capstone and studios and the student and state chapters and the team on the state team as well, there's definitely a lot of diversity in there. And I want to mention that it's not a single factor of diversity, because although we're talking about gender equality today, we also need to be sort of mindful of intersectionality, where a lot of people do have different factors that have compounded marginalization, and to be aware of that, especially when we're thinking about who's involved and who's not involved and should be. And just by the way, I think of the work that EWB does in humanitarian engineering, that takes into account by default and by design as should, gender, race, ethnicity, linguistic diversity, geographical, social, political, sexual orientation. And that already means that we are including intersectionality in by default of the work that we do. I don't think we can actually address gender equality without considering intersectionality. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So each of you are a leader every day, and there seems to be, I don't know from your perspective, for me, it's been a long journey. More than 50 years. My mum was there, and now it's still another 50 years on. But there is momentum. There does seem to be a bit of maybe it feels like a glacial shift, but maybe it's a seismic shift. Maybe there is some zeitgeist moment happening right now. But how do we keep this momentum going? How do we keep this conversation live? How do we not drop the ball so that we do change some of these statistics and we do ensure that no one's left behind? Steph?
Sorry, there's also the works downstairs, so I wasn't sure that was for me. Happy to start. I think there is. in the area that I work in, and in the country that I work in, definitely there's a lot of things. So I think it's about keeping these individual stories being shared. I was at an inspiring award ceremony event yesterday, and it just gives a sense again of the diversity, the uniqueness of each background, and what one woman would be recognized herself into, into someone else's background might not be the case for someone else. So I do like the I would suggest that encouraging more of these stories to be out there and to be shared would affect and touch more women. I think another one that I reflected on also is some of the traits that are really being embraced and valued by some of the women leaders that we heard yesterday. So in terms of partnership for success, that sort of humility in saying, yeah, we don't have the solution to all these wicked problems on our own, but it's by partnership that we will be able to start addressing these problems. And so I feel like that's something that some of the women leaders that I've heard, and I do recognize a lot of that sort of strong desire to work via collaboration partnership, and I think that's something EWB has been doing for many years too. So I would say, that building on that and seeing that as a strength, and not, I'm not designing that totally on my own. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be better. And I really would like these sort of values to be shared around and embraced by more people, men and women.
Yeah, fantastic. And Chelsea, do you want to build on that? What do you think is needed right now to keep this conversation live?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's things that could be done along the whole pipeline. I guess where my passion lies is with the school students and inspiring that next generation of diverse engineers coming through. So I'd love there to be a focus on getting to girls when they are younger and really highlighting for them and empowering them to be or do anything. I think yourself, Eleanor, and Steph as well had mothers who were kind of really encouraging in that space, but it's not like that for everyone, I guess. So really also not just inspiring the girls themselves, but also extending that to those who do have influence in their lives. So educating parents and family and teachers, and breaking down those stereotypes for them as well, so wider across society, just so that everyone knows what it is that engineers can do, that real positive impact that they can create, and I think that broadening that and breaking down those stereotypes will really have an impact in terms of increasing that pipeline of girls and young women who are then perhaps considering studying and looking into careers in engineering. And on top of that, I'd love to see as part of breaking down the stereotypes, having more visible role models, even in mainstream media, seeing female engineers in TV and movies. It has been great to see some. I really love the Hidden Figures movie, but I think we can see even more in that mainstream media, and really just spread that message across society, so that people really do believe that girls can do and be anything that they want to be.
Hey, and I absolutely agree with that, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts, and also Ali, your thoughts on this. We had a question from the audience, from Emily. I don't think I can get Emily to speak, so I'll just read it out. But it's building on what you're saying in terms of that pipeline. So Emily's asking, she's part of the emerging professionals group in her current workplace as an undergraduate. She asked, do we have a recommendation for event ideas or any kind of recommendations around how we can raise awareness or make an impact for women in engineering in the workplace? How do you use this group to start a conversation and get people actively involved? So women in engineering in the workplace, how do we get people involved? Ali, I'm interested to hear from you. And Chelsea, please chime in as well, because I know you're doing this a lot in your workplace too.
Yeah, thanks, Eleanor. And that's such a good question. And actually where my head was going when I was listening to Steph and Chelsea as well is that conversation around, we've talked a lot around the attracting women into engineering, and we've talked a lot around how we bring that lens of gender equality into our work as well, very practically in those examples you were able to give, Steph. Those are excellent. And where my head was going was around the other piece of retention, that once there are great individuals from diverse backgrounds in the engineering sector, how do we create this environment that enables people to want to stick around and contribute and bring their full selves? And so that's exactly where my head was going. I think one of the things that I've definitely seen at EWB, and actually across all of the challenges of this past year as well, I've started to see in more and more forums, is this appreciation of authenticity and bringing all different dimensions of yourself into your workplace in ways that are really positive. And I've always found that at EWB, which has, for someone going through an engineering pipeline and knowing that there are challenges, and I am such a perfectionist in so many ways, as are so many of my female colleagues, that to be able to admit where you don't have strengths and bring in others, like you were saying, Steph, bring in others in partnership, bring in others on your team. I think that applies to an individual and also organizations as well. I've really seen that appreciation of knowing your own strengths and also being okay with areas where you have weaknesses, or areas where potentially you stumbled and it was okay because it was a learning experience. I think that's going to be a really integral part of the conversation. I think where that starts to apply when it comes to groups within an organization is, how can we start to normalize this sense of full selves at work, and also an appreciation of different forms of leadership. So I know, Eleanor, you were talking in the beginning around human-centered leadership, and what does that mean? What could it look like in the workplace? I think an appreciation for the ways that different individuals bring those leadership qualities into their workplace, and starting to pat each other on the back for that. The leader who is a really amazing listener, for example, starting to advocate for more of that, starting to appreciate those different qualities and recognize them in whatever sphere of influence or forum that you have. It just helps individuals who have those strengths continue to be validated and grow in those areas. And I reckon that applies not just to women in the workplace. That starts to bring in a whole nother layer of diversity that we can see in our technical work. So that's the challenge that I would put in response to that question, but also keen to hear what you think, Chelsea, with your own workplace.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you've just said there, Ali. It's something that we've started to have a conversation about in my workplace, just really starting to celebrate people. And I think also building on what Steph was saying before, just recognizing those people who are doing great things in the workplace, and also telling those stories. I'm sure there are lots of people in the business who kind of, doing great things, but just quietly to the side, and people don't know what is going on. So just creating those opportunities to celebrate people and what they're doing, and absolutely agree with that kind of bringing your whole selves to work piece. It's something that's quite big in my company, with really clear support right from the top in our management, which I think is also really important, making sure that management is on board and actively kind of promoting these types of things as well. Because I think people, really appreciate, and it's also not just talking about it, but actually doing things as well. So having leaders actually get involved in these conversations. So where you do, if you are hosting a panel event or something like that, inviting those senior leaders along as well, so that they actually right there showing everyone that they are supportive of the conversation and what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic insight. Does anyone else have anything to add there? We've got some great questions coming through, and we've got probably about 7 or 8 minutes before I start wrapping up. Does anyone have anything to add on this? Or I'm going to feel free to do that. And here's another question. So you can hook on what's been said and build this into it. There's a question from Marini. Hi, Marini. Great to hear from you. What are the key motivations for you to be part of this movement for women in engineering? And what do you think are some of the challenges you've personally faced as an engineer, a woman engineer? So your motivations and some of your challenges, Marini's asking about.
Yeah, happy to start and jump in, Ali, at any point. Key motivations to be part of Women in Engineering was when I started my degree program as an undergraduate student, I didn't actually realize there was that big agenda gap. I knew there was an issue, but then to be one of like 50 women in the room in day one, I was like, well, this is weird. I don't understand why this is the case because engineering is fun. So that's what motivated me to give back and start to look into, you know, why this is an issue. What are the core barriers to participation, and then what can I do? And that's how I got started with school outreach as a PhD student, and then I've just never stopped. So yeah, I'd love to be able to say at some point though that this is no longer necessary. So this is why I guess we need to keep these conversations going to get to the point where this is no longer a thing. But key challenges I've faced, and I still face them today, is around self-doubt and what they now call imposter syndrome, but just going, you know, do I know what I'm doing here? It feels weird to be part of this thing, but actually own your achievements and what you know, and be proud of it and be visible, as Chelsea has been saying. I'm very bad at being visible, so that's been on my list of to do for this year. So please keep me accountable.
Absolutely, will do. And Marini, you know, you're a woman engineer yourself, so you know, maybe next time we'll grab you and put you on a panel like this, because I think I'd love to hear from you in Cambodia about what are some of your motivations and challenges as a woman engineer in Cambodia. Ali, Chelsea, Steph, do you have anything else to add here around your personal motivations and some of the challenges you've faced?
Yeah, on the first one, the motivation, I think for me, it really came from the environment angle, environmental engineering. I don't think I would have enjoyed so much other types of engineering. And because now I know more and more about the topic, I'm more and more passionate about environmental engineering, water, sanitation. I think that's what brought me to engineering. And because yeah, engineering was giving me the tools to look at these wicked problems surrounding that topic, then that's what I did. But yeah, so it's funny how I guess it's not, again, engineering is too large, and then there's different topics that might be of more interest with some of us. Key challenges, well, Eva stole mine. I think it's yeah, something that I'm constantly working on, and I actually find it you know, useful sort of self-challenge, just because it does give you that awareness of where you might go at doing things better, you know, looking at the bigger picture. So it's totally that team effort that I really value more and more. And I think, I mean, it's not about bringing everyone around the table, but just knowing what you need, what the gaps are, and how do you bring them on board so that the outcome becomes the best. And so I think that's a skill that we develop, I guess, with the experience, and that I'm developing every day.
Yeah, and that's a really, really great segue to this excellent question that just came through. So Kate McDonald. Kate has asked a couple of great questions, but this one particularly sort of really segues really nicely from what you're saying, Steph. One of the real benefits of diversity and inclusion is that it produces a diversity of thought. But the systems around people and organisations often that we don't like to be challenged. Systems don't like to be challenged. Organisations don't like to be challenged. Have we lost the ability to respectfully disagree? And how can we do that? So when you get those diverse voices in a room, how do you ensure that we're hearing them? How do we create organisations that are inclusive, that are where those diverse voices are heard, I suppose? Or is that, have we, like she's asking, have we lost that? are we afraid of diversity and diverse voices? Are we afraid of that potential for conflict? I'm interested to hear.
I think it's such an interesting question too, off the back of talking about how females who are objectively doing amazingly are still facing imposter syndrome. And so how do you have constructive, challenging conversation when you are dealing with your own self-doubt as well? It's a really interesting question to come on the back of knowing that that is a big challenge that people face when trying to engage in complex conversations. The thing that came up for me on that question was that the running tally we had amongst some of my EWB colleagues and I around how many days it had been before we were mistaken for a student, because constantly delivering presentations or engaging with university faculty, the amount of times that we would go into a meeting and feeling really excited and ready to share our ideas and asked to wait outside because they're about to meet with XYZ person. And to then get over that hurdle of the first impression you feel like you might have made, and that lack of, not necessarily lack of respect, but just simply coming from that place of, oh, whoops, we weren't quite sure. And then how do you get into the meeting and have a challenging conversation? Cut off the back foot like that. It is so tricky. I think one of the things that I've found in the EWB community, on the staff team, but also much more widely than that, is that space to share those stories and then continue showing up to engage in those conversations, because it is difficult. And also I know that I don't come from a situation that is as challenging as others might be coming from as well. And so to be able to have that community around you who is talking about this, who's having conversations like the one today that will keep up your own motivation, I think is really key. I'm not sure if we've lost the ability to have those conversations, but I think people like the community that's shown up here today is willing to keep trying and keep pushing. That's what came up for me with that question, is that network that will enable us to keep engaging in something that there's that wariness that could win over potentially.
Yeah.
I really like your point, Ali, about the community here. We're already thinking about it. We're comfortable to talk about it. And I think it's about continuing that in your workplace, because some of the challenges I imagine with difficult conversations is people don't know what it looks like to do this well. So if you've got a good crew of people having a challenging conversation at work, bring in some leadership so they can see, oh, actually, this is really useful and it should be done this way. And they can take that somewhere else and, make it the norm. The other thing I'd add to that is just safe space really matters. If people don't feel safe in conversations, they're not going to be their authentic selves. And that may be, a bit of a check-in beforehand of what Ali's just talked about. What are your biases and assumptions of the topic we're talking about, of the people in the room, and just be aware of whatever hat you might already have walking in and to let it go. And the other thing I'm super mindful of is we just need to call out behaviours and beings, or not beings, but ways of being that aren't okay. Because if we don't call it out in a friendly way for constructive change, then the cultures that we're trying to change will never change.
Yeah. So I was reading today, because we're in a great workspace here, and there's like all these little things up for International Women's Day, and there was one great quote about, women don't be polite. And we do have a tendency to sort of like couch things in a particular way, and sometimes it is okay just to sort of call something, and you can still be friendly in doing so. It's completely fine. So we're going to wrap up. Eva, we've talked a lot about the things that can change and the things that we can evolve and grow. Quick last snapshot. What do you think shouldn't change? What's the one thing that you would say shouldn't change?
It relates to my point just before, actually. What I really love about humanitarian engineering and being part of the EWB community with my work and the volunteering that I do is the culture. Please don't ever change the way that, EWB works, the people that are involved. It's always super welcoming, super open, super friendly. I'm never shy to give my ideas and just be involved in stuff. So please don't ever change that.
Beautiful.
So fun.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great way to end up. So thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much to our speakers. I could have kept going, as you can probably tell. I love a good chat. And that was really, really enlightening. So thanks so much for your insights. Really appreciate it. If you're on the call and you believe in what EWB does, if you've heard now about Photo Engineer is a women's engineering group in Timor-Leste. It evolved from EWB, it formed under the wing of EWB Timor-Leste. If you believe that wash solutions are, need to be developed that ensure that women do have access in the way that they need, particularly around sanitation solutions. If you believe that things like the nappy washing solution that we're talking about, that's going to give women so much more free time and eventually it likely would be a social enterprise that will benefit women also. If you believe these things are really important, please don't forget that we are a for-purpose organisation and we rely on donations. So if you haven't already done so, please consider joining us. Still a supporter of EWB. Really, really super easy if you just go onto our website, and for the price of a cup of coffee a month, like seriously nothing. You can keep programs like all of these going. So if you really believe in what we do, please consider that. It's ewb.org.au/donate. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks. Happy International Women's Day every day.